a nice flight, but really, it wasn't that much of a. Really wasn't that satisfied with the whole thing.
I
Yeah,
was surprised at how pretentious the whole thing was. I mean, you think
it's not.
people were walking around with special developer wristbands and that because that's how it came across.
Yeah,
Just
Hello,
went
I'm Dave
on and
Gilbert.
on forever, just constant. Ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wanted to get out of there after 10
really.
minutes.
I was really looking forward to just getting out and just not be around these fucking people. I mean,
I'm really
and
glad
the
I booked
session,
an early train, Jesus.
yeah, I
and
could
the
not wait to
sessions
get.
at the pub, man. Ugh,
Yeah.
they actually expect us
Oh.
to hang around with these people.
Yeah, it was and the organization was just pathetic. Really, it was just crammed.
It was a pile of
sweaty.
rubbish.
It was just kidding. We had the time of our lives.
My question goes to Mr. Cecil. That is how you pronounce your last name, right?
Yes, well done.
That was the question. That was not the question.
That was brilliant.
We got you there, didn't we?
Oh hell yeah! We had a fantastic time at AdventureX, and the thing you just heard was clearly and obviously the time of my life. It was the pinnacle of what happened.
It was definitely my major life achievement there as well. Yeah.
Charles Cecil was very polite with you.
Yes, he was. Well, he is a very polite man. I mean, coming for a man who I virtually round kicked in the face with, you're just beating broken horse to death at this point. He was quite cordial to me, actually.
As opposed to AdventureX attendees, whom you literally kick in the face.
Back of the head, sir. Back of the head.
But I had an absolutely phenomenal time, and I think you guys had too. I mean, we've already beaten this horse to death, and here we are doing it on the air, but it was absolutely spectacular. I cannot wait to get back.
Mm-hmm. I concur immensely. I thought it was fantastic. It was my mecca. I didn't want to make that joke at the convention, obviously, because that's a weird thing to say.
No,
but
and your Danish, so in your Danish show, it never goes down well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, actually, I was sitting around Gatwick Airport with my little video camera filming outside, and two police officers showed up and said, "Oh, do you have we noticed you were filming. You know, what are you doing that for?" I'm just doing a little home documentary thing. And they were like, "Yeah, you have to be careful these times, you know." Like, okay, so
be vigilant.
Be vigilant indeed. Charles Cecil and Dave Cummins were not far off back in 1994 when the classic of all classics, apart from Space Quest 4, was released.
Oh, I could fix them with sticky tape.
That's the one!
Brilliant.
This guy, what a game.
But yeah, back to AdventureX. I mean, I was blown away by how well it was organized and how kind people were in general. Richard Cobbett summed up his feelings in a very nice blog post that we should probably link to once we get this episode published. But there was really no pretension at all. This was developers, it was fans, it was academics, all walking side by side, and you could drop into any conversation you wanted. I mean, I've spent so much time talking to people like Dave Gilbert, Richard Cobbett, John Walker, James Broom, all of these wonderful people. I've got a list of calling cards.
Oh yeah, I would too. But that was amazing. Just having a sit down and jumping into conversations, and people weren't like there were no VIP booths, there were no egos, no one was towering over. Well, I was physically towering over. Dave Gilbert is a surprisingly short man.
He is. But
everybody is compared to you, aren't they?
Well, yeah, Gareth. What was your first impression when you? Because I must have warned you at some point that I am close to 7 feet tall.
Yeah, but until you actually see it in person, it doesn't really sink in. I mean, Fred's tall, so I was already used to being a short ass. but then you turn up, and it's like another Fred on top of Fred. It's not good.
You know, what funny was, I obviously flew into London like a couple of days before you trolls, and I met up with Gareth, and we had a tour of pubs in Westminster, which I thought Gareth knew well, and it turns out he didn't. But he did ask me,
running around killing people.
Well, he tried to get us to Oxford Street. Apparently, we got to New Oxford Street, but I still don't find myself believing.
Wait, that's not Westminster, is it? Oh, that's Whitechapel. I'm sorry. It's been a long time.
It starts with W. But,
close enough.
At that point, he did ask me, so Trolls is pretty tall, isn't he? And you could kind of glean this childish curiosity.
You're a freak, is what I'm saying.
Yes, that is absolutely true. That is what I am. And you know what's really freaky? I have a younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me. I've got him beat by 3 centimeters.
My younger brother is taller than me. Pisses me off, it does.
My brother used to wear his hair spiky just so he'd climb a little, closer to my peak.
The 90s. Glorious decade.
What do you eat in Denmark? Because I mean, I know that we have like a diet of like goose fat and lamb fat, and that's pretty much it, which would explain why we're so short. But you still have like the darkness and just.
Well, there's a lot of rye bread going around, and mostly
Danishes.
Yeah, Danish. Mostly the cadavers of young children we find in the corners of streets, and
it's Darwinian, is it? Everybody under 5 foot dies because they get eaten.
Yes, we still adhere to that old proverb of if you consume his heart, then you gain his courage. And basically, we just eat the homeless because they're very courageous to be out in this weather.
But back to AdventureX. And on that bombshell, no, really, I don't know what, I keep trying to steer the conversation back, but everything I wind up saying is just another way of saying it was great and I really want to go again. It was the perfect weekend for me.
Oh yeah, I definitely concur. Even the flight home, which we'll get to. I have some stories to tell. Yeah, but I think maybe we should just. Maybe we should just go around the table and just what was the best game you saw? Who was the fanciest person? Well, let's not play favorites or anything, but the most interesting or weird conversation we had, and sort of a top 10-ish thing. I don't know. What do you guys think? We probably should have planned this before we started.
Well, no, people don't listen to our show for that.
That's
we
true.
actually got that straightened out. We had a couple of wonderful people tell us they listen to this show for honesty. So we're going to be honestly unplanned about it. But I'm going to take over and ask Gareth, what was the most interesting... Yeah, British guy. What was the most interesting game you saw there?
I really liked Lancelot's Hangover. I liked the idea of it. It was just ridiculous. I wouldn't pick a favourite, though. I mean, that's the one that stands out, but only because Jean-Baptiste was such a lovely man and he taught me a bit of French. But, I mean, I thought Her Majesty's Spiffing looked really good. Pretty much anybody that's talked to trolls on his podcast was good. Francisco's new game looked gorgeous. I'm really looking forward to that one.
He's truly an artist. He's come in his own as an artist.
He is an artist.
Yeah, and I definitely think I'm going to be shelling out a couple of quid for Dropsy. I thought the more I heard about that game, the more nuances I heard about the game, and just looks really, really good and sort of doing something different with the genre. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great.
Oh yeah, one thing that Jay said during his, I think it was his roundtable with the other with Charles Cecil and the other whose name I'm sadly blanking right now, but he said that
Greg Buchanan.
Yeah, Greg Buchanan, and what was her name? I'm following her on Twitter now. She was fantastic. The one who did a TV show on gaming, the one who got an applause for saying no one has threatened to rape her in 6 months.
Well, that was Ellie Gold, wasn't it?
Ellie Gold, yeah.
But she wasn't on that. She wasn't on that panel, was she?
Ellie Gibson.
No, wait, that was. Oh no, that was the. Sorry, that was the journalists. Yeah, screw it.
Which was also a great panel. But I mean, Too Long didn't read us that the panelists were great.
Yeah,
Rhiannon Pratchett.
Yeah, Rhiannon Pratchett was on that. Anyway, Jay said that usually games are about defeating something or coming up against obstacles, and there are so many other things that you do in your daily life that you could build a game around. It doesn't always have to be It doesn't always have to be an antagonist. There doesn't always have to be conflict and fighting and all of that. Even though, standard storytelling and whatnot, Aristotle's, I know that gives Fred a boner every time someone...
Well, that was actually name dropped, so I was sitting right there in the conference hall trying to hide my massive boner.
Yeah. Anyway, long story short, Jay made an excellent point that there are so many other things going on in our daily lives that you could easily build a game out of. It doesn't have to necessarily be defeat evil.
Well, that brings up a great point, which was that there were so many different games on display. I mean, I didn't get to see as many as I wanted to. I kind of found myself agreeing with Richard, whom I hung out with a lot, that a demo on a laptop in the middle of a crowded room isn't really the best way to experience an immersive narrative experience. So many of the games looked interesting to the point where I would say, I want to buy this, but I didn't really sit down and play a lot. But there were so many different ideas on display on how to do a narrative in a game. And when you're talking about what Jay brought up there, I'm instantly reminded of A Golden Wake, which is like a story of it's like a story of corruption and then eventually redemption. And it's surprisingly non-dramatic on a wide scale. It's not as if there's some major antagonist. The protagonist himself is more of an anti-hero who kind of lapses into decadence and can't recognize himself by the end of it and then climbs back up. But to really have a couple of games there that explore this sort of different thing than what we had in the 90s, I thought was genuinely interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. I mean, what was really good as well, just looking at the games, was that even the ones that had and I'm not having a go at anybody here, I'm being polite, but not all of them were just 1991 Sierra pixel art point-and-click adventures. You had some that were sort of more pixel art, but I mean, even Dave's new game. What's Dave's new game called?
Oh yeah, Unavowed.
I mean, the sort of the high res stuff that Ben Chandler and he have been doing on that in terms of the art and all that kind of stuff, and I'm sure there's other people working on it. They're just the two names I can remember. That kind of high res pixel stuff, the stuff that Francisco was doing, there was that. But then there were all these other different kind of ways of presenting it. I mean, Lancelot's Hangover looked completely different. Her Majesty's Spiffing looked completely different. There was that game that was made from old Renaissance art, just kind of chopped together.
That one looks so weird really and so interesting.
Yeah, that was a Game Jam title. I can't remember what it was called, but it was part of Adventure Jam this year.
I'm looking at the list of exhibitors, and I can't seem to find it. I was really interested in that.
I don't think that was necessarily an exhibit, because what I learned, which a bit of a shame that we didn't know, they only published it a couple of days beforehand, but they had a couple of spare Mac Minis running where you could apply to have thrown any demo on that you wanted to show. I mean, these computers wouldn't be manned, so it wouldn't really be an exhibit as such. But I think that what's it called, Four Last Sins or something like that may have been part of that.
It was so weird. It was like Gareth said, it was just cut out Renaissance paintings, and then you were walking around. You had to commit a sin, so you changed the statue to resemble yourself. There you go. That's pride. And then the bishop says, "Now jump off this cliff," and then you do, and you wind up in weird hell, chained to a rock. And it was just that thing was all over the place. I wish you could remember the title of it. Yeah.
Well, we can always find out and write in the blog post that accompanies this episode.
But what Gareth was saying, absolutely, there are so many. I mean, adventure games have come such a long way from the presentation of it was just a throwback to the old 320 by 200 standards. There are so many. I mean, Her Majesty's Spiffing is fully 3D with camera movements and made for consoles. Incidentally, joypads and shit. So.
Yeah, and there were VR games and mobile games and everything you could think of. Her Majesty's Spiffing, which is handles really well with the Xbox controller.
It's built for it, actually.
Yeah, and it worked really well. And I talked quite a bit with Will Barr, who was exhibiting it, and actually instigated a bit of an argument with the exhibitor next to him. Quickly made my. Yeah, I do.
What happened there?
I strike up drama and then I leave.
Wait, what was that? Did you just pit a developer against another one, or what happened?
Yeah, I basically went fight, and then I went out of there. I think they.
And then scarp it.
Yeah, I think they patched it up with friendship, but prior to that, I did hear one of them shouting, "Get over here!" But that was by the time I'd left. I think what happened was, what the hell were we talking about? We were talking about Telltale games and interactive cutscenes and that sort of thing, I believe. And Will disagreed with the developer standing next to him. And at one point, I just kind of, took a step back and listened to what they were saying. It was all very salient, which explains why I can't fucking remember any of it. But that was another great thing about it. Again, I pretty much mentioned this already, I think, but here we go again. You could literally drop into a conversation with everyone. Everyone was just so keen to talk about this huge passion, this huge shared passion of everyone there. It was great.
Yeah, and politely so. I mean, I didn't see a single, disagreement or row. Certainly there were differing opinions, of course. That's what we had, the panels and talks for, and there are all these people making very different games with very different design philosophies and all this stuff. But no one was in a surly mood. No one was, it was all
no, I think
approachable.
It's so thought provoking to have someone like John Walker and Richard Cobbett show up, and if you've had one of your games reviewed negatively by one of these guys, you're gonna think, well, shit, it's the devil. But they're actually both really, really kind, great people.
Yeah,
it adds perspective because it's really different compared to talking to someone via text online. It's always different to meet face to face, and I'm so happy I got to do that finally.
It was so weird that panel on journalism. I'm going to pull up the schedule here so I don't get the names wrong again. So sorry. The panel writing about games with Ellie Gibson, that was right, Richard Cobbett, John
Gibson.
Walker, and Michael Stein from AdventureX, which you have to say "treff" as in your.
You also have to say Michael Stein. He was also a great guy. I got to speak with the AdventureX people at the pub afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, the panel started out with, is it fun writing a bad review? Alistair Beckett King was the moderator for that one.
He's
the dude who made, and one who made. I told you he was effortlessly funny. I mean, Nelly Kutelot is such a funny game, and it doesn't even try to. And I actually told him that your game was so effortlessly funny, and said, "Thank you. It took quite a fucking time to make." So I don't think it was, but. Anyway, it started out, is it fun to write a negative review? And Ellie Gibson was just sitting there going, yeah, it is. And I thought, oh, here we go. This is going to turn into an us against them kind of thing. And then it completely circumvented expectations. It turned into, hello, see the gaming press for the actual human beings that they are, instead of just these spite magnets who just sit there in their basements and rail against any, people's hard work and passions. No. I think the most important thing I took away from that was John Walker, who I think it was John Walker who said that when I see a bad game, when I write something negative about a game, it's because I want the developer to do better. The worst thing to review is a mediocre game. It's not a terrible game, and it's not a good game. Reviewing a mediocre game is the worst because you just want these people to do better if you can see the passion.
Yeah, and I like the thing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just saying that it was. I mean, if it's a bad game, I mean, Ellie said this as well. I mean, if it's a bad game that's been pumped out by kind of like one of the major studios, and you can clearly tell they've just slapped assets together and shipped it out to try and sell it for 50 quid and make a profit on it, then you can really slam it. But when you've got something where you can tell that somebody's put a lot of time and a lot of effort into this, and there's a lot of love in it, and it's shit. That's when it becomes really difficult.
Yeah. I liked what Richard said at that panel, which was that he never goes into a game wanting to slack it. He always sits down in front of a game wanting it to be great, and sometimes it isn't. And I thought that was very thought-provoking, because you probably often forget that when you're faced with these guys who can be so side-splittingly funny that it hurts. Just naturally. I mean, John Walker and Richard Cobbett are also effortlessly funny and effortlessly acidic, I might add.
But I mean, they also talked about the economics of a bad review. I mean, one of the reasons why they've got reputations for doing funny bad reviews is that they did a funny bad review and then their editor kept giving them shit games for them to do funny bad reviews about.
Yes.
And so you end up typecasting yourself almost, and that's another reason why they don't necessarily enjoy doing it all the time, is because you end up just... I think hollow was the word that one of them used.
Yeah, I think Richard was the one who said hollow. And actually, that mirrors... I used to briefly be a freelance movie reviewer for a Danish game magazine. Don't ask me why. But
I remember that.
Yeah, but I wrote a couple of reviews for bad movies, and apparently the editors thought that was funny. So he kept sending me these awful, shitty movies. And I'm currently packing up because I'm moving in the middle of December. So why did I say that like I pronounced it with a Z? December.
Why did you say it? Why did you say it like it's relevant to what you're telling?
No, it's relevant. What I emptied out all my cupboards and shit, and I've got 2 giant black trash bags of shitty movies in DVDs in their cases, only been played once, and I'm just either I'm going to chuck them or I'm going to throw them at someone. I don't know. And I have a feeling the journalists at that panel have the same about games. Well, they can't physically throw a digital copy at anyone, but still.
I think what you've described him in the sort of the leading film critic in this country, Mark Kermode, he said very similar things about bad reviews and doing bad kind of things, and everybody loves it when he does a bad review on the radio, but he deliberately only does it for films that genuinely deserve getting angry over. If it's just a shit, offensive film, it's like, this isn't worth my time, don't go and see it, move on.
Which is interesting, because that's really how most YouTube stars that I was going to say grew up with, but some of the
you've become a lot more mature as of late.
He's 2 meters tall and 12 years old. Trolls.
Yeah, I had the longest childhood ever, and I just only grew up about 3 or 4 years ago.
Also, have you ever had a dreams that?
Yes. No, but. Before, you really had YouTube stars, you had these little, blip.tv reviewers, and a lot of them branded themselves on being angry. I mean, the most famous ones are like the Angry Video Game Nerd and Angry Joe and all this. And to some extent, the Nostalgia Critic, who just sits there and shouts at movies and such. And for a long time, that was, the reviewing quality of these amateur reviewers is just to be angry and get pissed off because that's hilarious, that's entertaining. But I quite like the idea of anger coming from a place of wanting these people to do better. I mean, why would you put this out there? You can do better. Come on, my child.
Motivational anger, and also of course,
a bit of a spanking, motivational spanking, really.
Yeah. I mean, that was a great panel, definitely. I think my favorite talk in general, I did miss a couple. So, I got to go back to the Twitch stream at one point and watch Jay Dolan's talk.
Jay. We missed Jay because we were talking to John.
We were talking to John, and he was so nice, and it's not fair, but damn it, life isn't fair. We actually missed... We missed Jay and we missed Greg Buchanan and we missed Cecil, of course, because we were heading to a subway. But what I wanted to say was just briefly to get into another talk than the game review one is that I really enjoyed the talk by Geo Hopmeyer, who talked about documentary games. That was a brilliant talk, and it was so inspiring. And again, as we've talked about earlier, there were so many different games on display, and I thought it was very interesting to try to cover, well, how can you do a real life story in the form of a narrative game?
Yeah, and I was at the start of that lecture, at that talk, I was really struggling to, okay, what the hell's a docu game? Because in a game, obviously the player has agency, so he has some influence over what's happening. But so how are you going to depict historical events by historical people and then give the player, because every player, what was that example? Who was the one who came up with the example of in Little Big Adventure 2, every player has tried to gut punch the pregnant girlfriend just to see what happens.
That was Richard Cobbett.
Was that the Cobmeister?
Yes. Talking about what's funny.
Stitch it, Richard. Yeah.
He then went on to make the greatest rubber joke of all time.
Oh, yeah, people who can still conceive despite being made out of rubber.
That was good. Oh, Cobbett was such a. I mean, I learned after AdventureX. Apparently, he has social anxiety, and he, has to go in and treat every appearance as a performance. And I could not tell.
You could never tell. He did seem very genuine. And I mean, spoiler, I guess, in the interest of full disclosure, I mean, some of you listening to this will have seen the selfies we shared, but we kind of had a little. We kind of had a little party going. I don't think it wasn't in a destructive kind of way, because we were also kind of doing our best to mingle. But the four of us, the No More for Today guys, I mean, the three of us, and Natalie Uhas and Richard Cobbett and James Broom stuck around a bit, Jean-Baptiste de Clerfay. We would hang around a lot and talk together. And Cobbett was really so gracious to talk to, and he actually complimented our show, which I frankly think is amazing. And,
I mean, he has to be wrong sometime.
And he specifically told me to stop saying something was humbling. He's shut up with that thing. Oh, I'm so humbled. Say you're proud or something instead. So I'm gonna go with that. I'm motherfucking proud.
But while Fred is off stroking his own ego, now I'm actually really interested.
I'm stroking something else, but we've moved beyond video on this show.
The flesh noodle makes
I view your action as sexual harassment and find your behavior objectionable.
But I was really interested because I was talking to Jay. Warm, damp hug, man. I mean, he was dressed as a rainbow.
I had the best warm, damp hug from him.
Yeah. Oh, he gives great hugs. But I really wanted to attend his talk, and I missed it completely by accident. I was even, looking over his shoulder as he was doing his presentation. He was sitting there. I was talking to Sean Etchison of Cloak and Dagger Games, whom I've never met before, but have had great talks with on Twitter. We wanted to do game jams together and such. By the way, there's an interesting story there, but I'm going to finish the J one. There are so many. I was looking over his shoulder, and Jay was just going, why did I decide to write my own software for the presentation? All I'm doing is just fucking fixing bugs at this point. Like, this presentation was done, but the presentation wouldn't run properly.
It was very well done, actually. He had things like he had timelines in there, and because of the presentation software he could click and drag around the timeline, and then when he was done, he clicked somewhere else, and then Dropsy would walk to the next slide. So the background would slide across, and then Dropsy would get to the next slide, and then he'd have a conversation about something else, and things would pop up, and then he could get Dropsy to walk away, and Dropsy was making noise as he walked as well, the kind of squeaking boots thing. Oh, very good.
Why did we talk to the amazingly lovable John Walker?
Yeah,
talking to you was great. Well, while you were watching Jay Tholen's talk, Trolls and I were basically plugging Paradigm in front of John Walker and having really, I thought, interesting talk, because I used to study to be a teacher, about children and originality and imagination and all these grand subjects which were, on a higher abstraction level than the conference overall operated on, but still very much part of that same, still a shade of what we were dealing with.
Yeah. This was the thing, though. There were loads of these kind of questions that came out. I just think this is a good opportunity to, if we haven't already said it, to say it again and again and again. If you go to the AdventureX website, go to their Twitch stream, all of the talks are up there. You can watch them all back. So do that, because there are some really good ones.
Yeah,
including the final one, The Dark Room, which was amazing.
How the hell did they film that? Because that was one dude and a little flashlight that he just pointed at himself. That must have looked shit.
Quite well, on the Twitch actually. Stream. It seems okay. I think they had a few different cameras set up, because I think they switched cameras. I've only previewed it a bit. Obviously, it doesn't come across as well in the video as it did live, because there was so much interaction with the crowd. It was brilliant. And that was actually, he was also a very nice guy. I got to talk a bit with him later. He showed up at the pub, which amazed me, because Alistair kind of talked about him with this reverence. You know, he was actually a somewhat known comedian whom they'd managed to book, and they were kind of amazed that he'd even come. But he actually hung around.
No, that's amazing. In his big fuck off suit of armor as well.
Nah, I got a selfie with him right outside the doorway. He was still wearing the armor, but he had taken it off by the time we got to the pub.
He seemed like I caught a glimpse of him in the sandwich queue at the top of the stairs while we were talking with speaking with Leonard and John.
Oh yeah, he came in with his suitcase there.
Yeah, and I just looked over and saw this dude with his wily completely white hair, and I just casually said to no one in particular, "Oh, look, there goes a wizard," and. And then I had no idea who he was or what the dark room was until that fateful evening.
No, that was amazing, and he was really, really nice, and seemed like the kind of guy who laughed at my jokes genuinely. But I don't know, either that or he was a great actor.
That's professional courtesy. Comedian's professional courtesy. He was rolling his eyes on the inside.
That polite laugh.
Of the talks that I missed, because one thing that struck me was that it was a very tightly scheduled program that they had going.
Then you struck another attendee.
Yes. Well, still just grazed the back of his head. I had my legs crossed. The seats were awfully narrow, and I just grazed the back of his head in a leave a footprint kind of way. But anyway. They had quite a tight schedule, and most of the time you were just, I want to go see this, but I also want to try one of these games. I also want to talk with this developer, and you basically just had like 20-minute slots of having a conversation. Then, it's on to the next thing, which is not a bad thing, I would say. I mean, normally at a convention, you're just walking around going, the next one's a bit shit. I don't want to go to that. I'm actually getting kind of bored. I want some lunch. This time, everything was interesting. I'm not going to say it was all gold, but it was interesting.
Well, it does kind of tie into what is my lone criticism, because I loved the fact that it was so packed, but at the same time, I do think it's a bit of a shame that maybe it couldn't have been avoided because people have different individual schedules, but they're most, the celebrities of the conference when it comes to people who did talks were clearly Rhianna Pratchett and Charles Cecil, and they had both of those on day one, which meant that the place was so packed that by the middle of the day they had to turn people away, which is always a horrid thing to do. I spoke to Rebecca McCarthy about that at the pub, and she was actually quite sad that she'd had to do that. And then the day after, we've all gone to the pub and had quite a few drinks. Most of us, I think, at least the people who would drink alcohol. When we went on Sunday, one of the first talks, apart from Michael Stein, was Alexis Kennedy on poetic design, which was really, really clever and really intellectually dense, which is exactly what you need when you're kind of semi-hungover. I mean, I was there for that, but I still get the feeling I missed most of it, because I was kind of sitting there in the back row next to all you guys going, this man is talking.
Yeah, I definitely have to watch that one back. I'm still not sure what I thought about that one.
I'm not sure what it was all about.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're nursing some good hangovers. I'm here to talk about mechanics as allegory. It's like there are too many syllables in that.
That doesn't mean it was a bad talk, but it was definitely a little more out there than the one Michael Stein brought, which was just very educational. Here's how to deal with the gaming press in a very sensible way. You can use these tools, yada yada yada.
But I thought Hobmeyer did that better in terms of being able to get through a lot of very dense intellectual. I mean, he's sort of from a sort of a semi sort of academic background as well. I thought he did a much better job of getting his ideas across in a relatable way.
That was impressive, even though he went so much. He went so much on the over time that Tom Cole looked like he wanted to shoot him.
Oh yeah, the poor dudes at the front who had to sit there with the little signs that says 10 minutes,
Stop,
5 minutes, stop. And
We have called the police. They will be here momentarily. Stay where you are.
But I mean, in all fairness, they were pretty good at keeping the schedule. I mean, inevitably it slid for like 10 and 15 minutes at some point. But that
But that's not major.
that is not
I've been
major.
to academic conferences that have been measured in hours by how late they've been. It's fine.
Yes,
I think,
me too.
I
Exactly.
think they were a bit, I think they were a bit blown away by the reception of it. And Alistair did tell me that he kind of hoped to keep it at the size it had this year. But they could probably still book a bigger space for it and just have a limited number of wristbands.
Yeah, I don't know. One thing they should probably do next time is
Because
being able to
qualified.
pre-order armbands. I mean, I love the fact that it's a free convention. You can just show up and get an armband, and I loved the size of it. To be honest, the convention floor was just the right size. It had that big fuck off staircase in the middle that I constantly was about to hit my head on. But the auditorium had the right size. Some people had to be turned away because when you've got Dave Gilbert as the opening speaker, everyone wants to cram in to see that little guy, and
This cute little guy.
it was, he was so adorable.
He was very, very friendly, and he was just. I was blown away by how humble he was, because he's pretty much been declared to be the messiah of modern adventure games. But he actually,
He's just a naughty
Did you hear-
boy.
Yeah, he is. Did you hear that noise? That was him groaning all the way over from New York at being called a messiah.
Yeah, sorry again, Dave. We'll patch things up again, I'm sure. But really, I was just blown away by how humble he was, and he actually did tell me that he made a point of just going from conversation to conversation, just mingling, listening in, and then chiming in if he was asked about something, because he just enjoyed it. He just enjoyed the friendly atmosphere and the friendly conversation.
Yes, much like Jesus. And,
Much like Jesus.
And what? You've seen Dogma, right? When Chris Rock says, "Oh, Jesus, he just sat there and listened to us yammer on," and that was kind of what Dave Gilbert did. Now, what was I going to say? quickly.
Something about the big staircase in the middle of everything.
Wait. No, wait. Speaking of short and very humble people, William Barr did Her Majesty's Spiffing Postmortem, which was basically just 30 minutes. No. 15 minutes. He had 11:15 to 11:30. 15 minutes of him apologizing for his amazing-looking game.
That is the most British thing ever.
And he's Irish.
Yeah,
He's British. How many times?
Isn't he from?
Sorry,
isn't,
Mr.
isn't,
Imperial.
isn't he from Northern
It's ours
Ireland?
still,
So
it's ours.
technically,
I mean, he had the most adorable accent too.
well,
Yeah.
he was a nice guy as well.
You can get
I
away
get
with
the-
anything with that kind of charm. That is Irish, not British.
I get the feeling Gareth was wanting to say something. Did you
No,
get
no,
it out
just-
of the system?
No, it's just that we still own that bit. So
Yeah. Oh, and damn it, my brain is so scattershot. It's been a long day because I was up until 2 a.m. looking through all the footage we'd shot on the little camcorder. Had a whale of a time.
Well, speaking of long day, you mentioned earlier you wanted to tell us the travel story for posterity, and why don't you just go ahead and do that? Tell us about how you got home.
Oh no, I'm just going to tell a good story before I get to that one, because when you say I missed Jay's talk and we were talking with John. Before that, I was watching Jay do his presentation, and I was doing that because I was standing at the top of the stairs just shooting some footage of people walking around, and all of a sudden someone walks up from behind me and grabs my arm and says, "It is time for you to meet Sean." And he walked me over to the corner where this dude was hunched over in a hoodie, just looking down. And I walked over and, tapped him on the shoulder and shook his hand, and he looked up and smiled at me, and it turns out it's Sean Etchison from Cloak and Dagger. So they really fucking live up to their name, I must say.
That kind of reminds me of the one Rebecca and I pulled in Gareth the night before, because just to everyone listening, we did this game for Adventure Jam 2015 called Late Last Night, and there's a talkie coming out in like a month or so at the latest, and Rebecca, who was one of the organizers, does the voice for our protagonist, Morgan, who, thanks to Gareth, has to say, "Where's my lighter?" about 1,050 times. So when I was
not a
talking,
diverse writer.
So when I was talking to Rebecca, I went, you know what would be great? Over there is Gareth. He's the guy who made you say, "I want my lighter" that many times. What if you pull up your hood? Call him over and say, "This woman wants to say something to you." And when we get over there, you pull down your hood and go, "I want my lighter." So we did. And what was great was Gareth was so perfectly British about the whole thing because he genuinely thought he was being attacked by this woman whose lighter he had no idea where was.
I thought I'd stolen something, so I don't think I have. I'm sorry.
In that accent as well. Just, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry, my dear. I don't seem to have it, love."
He lapsed into the ice cream wizard.
Yes. Oh, it is. When I've never seen Gareth flustered, and now I'm speaking as if he's not even in the room. But when he gets slightly confused, he does lapse into the very uber polite children's narration kind of ice cream wizard voice, and it's really adorable. It is.
Yeah, that was what happened when we were trotting around London as well. I believe this is Oxford Street.
And I was wrong.
It wasn't Oxford Street. I don't even think it was New Oxford Street.
It's never Oxford Street. We found that very nice pub.
We found several nice pubs, and we saw Dennis Skinner.
We did.
Yeah, you keep going on about what's his deal? Who's Dave Skinner? Because these guys arrived. Fred arrived a couple of days before me. I went out on the Saturday of the AdventureX, and then I went home on Sunday and missed the second pub. So I was literally just there for 2 days.
You
and
missed
Fred
the flight as well.
There's that, yes, but Fred made a little mini vacation of it, and. So Gareth and Fred went out for drinks, and they keep bringing up this dude they saw on the train. Who the fuck is that?
Well, Dennis Skinner is a member of the British Parliament who got shown out. He was shown the door for calling the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, "Dodgy Dave."
That doesn't sound too rough. Maybe it's rough in British. Maybe it just goes against the politeness.
You're not supposed to do that, dear chap. There's I don't know if it's apocryphal or whether it was him, but he does have a reputation. I think he said something like half the government are liars, and obviously you're not allowed to call anybody a liar in Parliament, and he was censured for that. And he said, "I apologise, Mr. Speaker. Half the government aren't liars."
Wow.
That's great.
Oh yeah, you
can understand. So you can understand why it was a little bit humbling. Sorry, Richard. To see that man.
Yeah, Gareth, you also told me that in British Parliament, there's actually there are a couple of lines on the floor, and those are there so people can't attack each other with swords. They're exactly a sword's length.
Yeah, they're exactly 2 swords lengths apart, so that you can't have a sword from.
Well, I mean that's clever. I mean, after all, bear in mind I attacked Natalie Uhas with a balloon sword.
That's true. You popped her in the ear, didn't you?
Well, she was wearing I was bopping her on the head with it. She was wearing hairpins, and I didn't know.
An oddly phallic-shaped object appeared at the first pub evening,
that was handed to me by one of the guys from Jolly Boat, which was the comedy act on the first afternoon, and I think I'm the only one of us who went to that. But I later befriended one of the guys in that, Tom Jolly, I think he's called. Sorry, Tom, if you're not.
Best friend.
Sorry if you're not even called Tom. Yeah, best friends forever. I'm great at networking. It's gonna be great. But yeah, he handed me a balloon sword as part of their performance, and that was the one that unfortunately fell victim to Natalie's hairpin. And the great thing was afterwards, I took the deflated little disappointing pieces and just put them in Richard Cobbett's shirt pocket and went, "Here, these are for you. I bestow you to take care of these." And he just, apparently Richard and Natalie were staying in the same hotel room, and he just chucked those balloon pieces on the floor. So when she got up, she saw this fleshy little mass of rubber just lying around going, "What the hell is that?" So
It went flaccid.
it got around. That flaccid balloon sort really did get around.
Oh, that was brilliant. I mean, the evening at the pub. I mean, here's a shout out to the arrangers. That's not the word. What is it called? Organizers. Sorry. Yeah.
Revolving.
Was that they had made sure that the people were not only followed quite nicely to the pub, which was very close to where we needed to go, very close to the train station, very close to everything. Made sure that people got right in there, and they had booked like the back room of it, and then they had pizza and chips.
Yeah, and I wound up eating leftover pizza on the first night with a friend of your show as well, Alex Whitington, who was also a great guy.
Oh yeah, great guy.
We were he was like tearing leftovers apart, and we were splitting them between us. We were both out of our minds. It was absolutely great. And the night after, this is great too. This is after you'd both departed. I went up to the toilet, which was on the first floor, and went up in front of a urinal. And Alex is already in there, and there was like a minute's silence. None of us spoke, and I just went, "Well, it's great meeting up." And there's like a couple of seconds of silence, and he goes, "Someone had to make it awkward." Even worse. And I'm so sorry to anyone listening who were there. The toilet had run out of soap. And this is, of course, on Sunday night when everyone is walking around shaking hands, hugging, and saying goodbye. So if I've passed anything on to you, I'll just leave my email address in the blog post.
You may have accidentally impregnated Richard Cobbett. That's what you're saying.
We all have health insurance over here because we're socialists.
Yes,
and
that is
healthcare's
true.
free over here because we're still just about socialists when it comes to healthcare.
Oh, but speaking of, I had an absolutely brilliant time on the first pub evening talking to Lainey Berry of St. Christopher School's Lockdown,
she was great.
She was absolutely great because she was an inner circle. She's been at AdventureX many times, and she knows everyone around there. And I barely even sort of looked at her game, and I thought, okay, this looks very interesting. And
Are you saying you had barely even looked at it? Show myself.
Yeah, yes, please. But anyway, we ended up, bonding not so much over her game, although I am going to check out her game, obviously. But being fiery little bitches, both of us, just talking about punk rock gigs and everything. That was amazing.
She was cool, and I had a really major Trump talk with her on the first day as well. And I ran into her the day after. Where I was obviously still a bit hungover, and I was walking down the big staircase, and she was walking towards me, and I was smiling. There was indeed a very big smile on my face because it'd been so great, and she made a note of that and just went, "You're all a bundle of smiles, aren't you?" And I just looked at her and went, "Yeah, well, I'm so tired. I think I'm hallucinating." So that's also part of the reason. There was a lot of humor going around, and then we were there.
I mean, it was just amazing. I mean, I kept saying, and I kept wanting to not say it, but I kept saying whenever someone was asking, "Are you having a good time?" I couldn't help but say, "Yes, these are my people." Like I was. It was really like a summer camp. I think Jay Tolan afterwards said that this was great. We should make it a summer camp.
Oh yeah, he wrote that.
There's like a brief moment of me going, "That would be fun. We should do that."
It very much would. And I think part of the reason, this is the heavy bit of the program, and I've kind of alluded towards this in our Facebook message thread, but part of the reason I had such a good time is that I just feel so validated. I feel I'm validated in doing this show now, and I'm validated in having this weird interest. And, I never had that. Trolls, you're quite a few years older than me. Sorry, but you are. So you grew up with friends who would physically play these games with you, and I never had that. And
Not a lot.
You had some, and I had none. So
I had one, and he was actually there, Leonard.
You had one, and I had none. But I mean, thing is that ever since I came into the Space Quest community at the ripe age of 14 and was a little bitch with a shitty nickname, this was my alone thing. I was alone about it. It was kind of awkward. And yes, you'd still be kind of lonely about it, even if you have online relations based on it. But being in a space with so many people who believe in the same things you do, it's just amazing. Of course, by then I realized I'd walked into a Baptist church and I made my way to Goldsmiths. But really...
No, but actually, I completely sympathize. I've felt the same way. I mean, if I tell anyone, "Hey, I'm into computer games," and they go, "Oh, really? What kind?" and I just, oh god, here comes the long. How long have you got, really? Because no one. And you go,
and you go. Have you ever played Monkey Island? And they go, no. And then at that point, the conversation is just gone all the way downhill. You can't save it. Just back away, avoid eye contact, and then run.
Yeah, just talk about something else. So, how about them Tigers, eh?
Always good to fall back on the weather. That was why it was such a gratifying experience. I just feel like that's where I should be. You know, there was room for me, and that was great.
So, Gareth, do you feel a little less empty inside after having been to AdventureX?
Suppose.
He's still British.
No, I really did enjoy it. That's the first time I've really had an opportunity to it's weird because I'm used to doing these kind of things because I've got loads of friends sort of all just strewn across various parts of the planet.
He has friends.
You lucky piece of shit.
To do with my work that I only ever talk to online, and I only ever see them once every year, maybe every couple of years, when we happen to be at the same conference at the same time. And so I'm used to that kind of thing. But what I'm not used to is going to something where everybody has exactly the same interests, because historians don't have the same interests. They have their own little niche that they do, and there might be some overlaps.
Like LucasArts the dig.
It all comes down to the dig.
Everything relates to the dig.
But you don't get the opportunity to go into a room with virtually complete strangers. I mean, I may have spoken to a couple of them for half an hour on open crowdsource, or you two who I've spoken to. But I mean, I've only met Fred very briefly. But just be able to sort of go in and just be able to talk to people, listen to their conversations, and have a good time without really knowing them and not knowing them. It was, it was a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yes. Yeah, and again, it was just so warm and fuzzy because people would let you drop into their conversations, and you could just walk in, introduce yourself, and say why you thought that conversation was relevant to be, and you'd be welcomed with open arms. And
how that conversation related to the dig. Yeah, it was like in real life Twitter. Really, you could just hang out and lurk and listen to people's conversation. You could drop in at any time, and if there was room, character-wise, then you could, be part of the conversation.
Exactly, yeah.
And I love the fact that you'd be able to go up to someone. I mean, Cobbett and I were standing in line and joking about how shit the 11th hour is, and we could tell there were people standing behind us, like nodding and like wanting to get in on the conversation and commiserate about how shit 11th hour is, and we just sort of turned around and started, asking people, isn't it right? 11th hour is total shit. And yeah, it actually is. So it was just, I mean, what kind of opportunities do you get in life where you're standing in line with a bunch of people and everyone knows how shit 11th hour is?
Yeah, and it was good. It was good I wasn't standing there because I don't actually know. I've never played it. Well, that was actually funny because we joked so much about your sense of direction and the fuck-ups you do when traveling, and we'll get back to that shitty story, I'm sure. But I was actually walking from my hotel, then meeting Gareth and his wife Emma on the way, sort of halfway to Goldsmiths.
Oh, you met Emma?
Yeah, I did. And then we walked together to the university, but we actually showed up way after you did.
Yeah, that was fun. I had not expected to get in at the time that I did. I was expecting to miss Dave Gilbert's first talk completely and maybe, barge in on William during his talk, like panting and sweating and everything. But no, I actually
And
rocked
kicking
up
a guy over the head.
kicking guys over the head, which I saved for later, obviously. But no, I rocked up about half an hour before the doors were opening and stumbled into this cafe where Cobbett and Juhas and shit, I forget her name. A third party we're sitting in this closed cafe across from the convention hall, and just casually walking on, standing in line, having a good time, no rush, no stress. And also finding my hostel in the evening was really quite uneventful and non-stressful. A bus took me straight to the front doors of it mostly, and just no worries, no problems.
And you have a nice shiny Oyster card now.
Yes, I do. Because thank God for Mr. Gareth here, because he informed me that Dr. Gareth. My apologies, sir.
Unfortunately, Dr. Gareth can't actually take public transportation in or around London because you went to Roskilde with it.
Yes, that's true. It turns out that British public transportation does not, in fact, accept currency. You'd think they do, but they don't.
Well, their currency is pretty shit at the moment, and I was living the high life off of that.
So the good doctor actually lent me his Oyster card, which is this travel card that you get around British transportation with, and he said just give it back to me tomorrow. I mean, the guy's cuddly and warm. He doesn't come across it, but he is. And I do. I managed to get there and get back again, and completely forgot all about it. So I went. When everyone else was off to the pub for a second time on Sunday, I went to Gatwick Airport. And then spent 22 hours there, and all the while had Gareth's Oyster card in my pocket.
Yeah, you're forgetting the bit where the 22 hours at the airport wasn't intentional, because right now it just sounds like you made an incredibly bad trade.
Yeah, I should have gone to the pub with you guys. Anyway, long story short, Southern Rail can go fuck themselves.
They're terrible. They have a reputation here for being absolutely terrible.
Yes, I looked up a website of a dude who was so pissed at Southern Rail that he had decided to log all the times he'd been late and then send them an invoice at the end of each month.
Awesome.
That is so brilliantly passive-aggressive.
Yes, it's a very British thing to do. Sir, I quarrel. Here is your invoice.
Well, don't worry too much about having my Oyster card, because one, they only work in London, and two, if you've got a British contactless bank card, then you can just use those, so it's fine. Save it for when you come next time.
Yes, I'll be able to actually catch the bus to go see you. Jesus, what is up with my voice?
I'll be able to catch the bus. Maybe the next AdventureX will be in Scotland.
Interesting story about the 22-hour...
Sticky tape.
Ooh, yes. A quick interesting story about the layover, or unexpected layover. I missed my flight because, the train was delayed. So... and it was the last flight of the evening. So after a lot of bad noise, we ended up in the terminal, and I had met 4 nice people from the Faroe Islands who speak Danish, because people from the Faroe Island are forced to learn our hideous...
Is that how you pronounce it?
The Faroe Islands?
No, I think it's more like Faroe Islands.
Fairy... Whatever we call them.
Well, I mean, not like the Egyptian pharaohs, though.
or like the mythical beasts that flap around like little insects. Oh, we're all fairies. Or whatever you British people use.
Yeah,
no. Say it the Danish way. Say it the Danish way, because they are Danish still, right. Just about.
Faroe. Yep. Yeah, no one gets that. There's even an A and an Ö in there. The 2 of the 3 useless Danish letters. Anyway. Long story short, we were sitting around, and they were trying to help everyone get on to the next flight, because EasyJet will charge you 80 quid to get transferred to a different flight. regardless of your excuse for being late for the flight.
It doesn't sound easy.
No, that was rock hard yet. And so this dude is standing around with his mobile phone trying to work out how to get back to Copenhagen the cheapest way. And he exclaims, "Oh, good! I found a flight. If we just go to Luton Airport, it'll be around £8, and we can catch a flight to Copenhagen." I was like, £8? Are you serious? Yeah. And he books 4 flights, for himself and his 3 compatriots. And then he goes over to me and says, "Okay, should we get your flight booked now?" And that's when the email receipt ticks in, and it says, "Congratulations, you have bought 4 tickets from Luton Airport to Copenhagen on December the 12th." And and you could just see the light in his eyes shut off. So at that point, we just bit the bullets and paid our 80 quid. And
this is why they get self-rule nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, people from the Faroe Islands, they have a shit time of it already, and that was not helping. So we just bit the bullet, paid 80 quid, and the next flight left at this point, it was around 11 p.m. in the evening, and the next flight was 4 p.m. the following day. So, yeah. I slept very well in that airport.
You slept very, very well, knowing that you had not spent 8 quid on absolutely nothing of use.
Well, at least if he finds himself in London on December the 11th, he'll know he can go home the next day.
Yeah, he just needs a flight over there
him and 3 people
in not so terribly long time. It's gonna be great when that plane takes off and there's like 4 vacant seats on there.
But you know what? Despite an extra day, and I had to write my work and say I was going to be a bit late on Monday. Actually, can I just have the day off? Thanks, because I'm in fucking London. It's a long swim. I was, my work was very understanding of that. And I just had a big fuck off smile on my face the entire time. Because every time, I closed my eyes, I was still back at the convention center, hanging out with, Rihanna Pratchett and William Barr and the Kill Monday games people, Isak and Natalia. Oh, they were so adorable. And,
they were lovely, yeah.
And everyone, and even Charles Cecil, whom I got to pose a question, as you heard at the start of this episode. I never actually got to speak with him. And I was hanging around sheepishly at the top of the stairs, and he was talking to Alistair, one of the organizers and the designer of Nelly Kutla. And I thought, I am not barging in on that conversation. That would be rude. Turns out,
I wanted to say hello to him too. And I was standing he was standing with his back to me, directly next to me. And I just kind of wished, if only I had balls enough to tap his shoulder.
Yeah, just a handshake because the day before, the Friday before AdventureX, I was at a birthday party and I was sitting across from 2 of my friends whom I very late in life learned to actually play adventure games. I went to university with one of them, and his girlfriend plays adventure games, and I was just casually saying, "Okay, I'm going to AdventureX tomorrow. Might meet Charles Cecil," and she spilled her beer, mouth dropped, and he said, "Oh my God, pinch his bottom for me."
Well, at least you can go back telling her that his last name is indeed Cecil.
Yes, I can. I'd really wanted for just to handshake Charles Cecil and say thanks for everything except Broken Sword 5 and Broken Sword 3 especially. I think he would have seen the humor in that, and just to film a short video of him going, "Hi Sandra, he has not pinched my bottom. I won't let him," or something like that. Didn't get the chance, and I didn't know when I was standing at the top of the stairs that this would be my last chance to, pinch Mr. Cecil.
No, because he darted out of there, which is actually a real shame. I did get to meet up with Robert. I think his last name is Megonay. Looks kind of Greek. Oh, yeah, well, the guy doesn't look Greek, but he's the QA lead on Thimbleweed Park now, and he worked on Broken Sword 5 as well, and he was a great guy as well. He kept booping my nose for some reason. I've kind of joked around with that because I have a selfie of me and Robert and Dave Gilbert, and I've written in every single caption to this image that one of them keeps booping my nose. It's Robert, and I have no bloody idea why.
I would not imagine Dave Gilbert being able to reach your nose, much less bob it.
Well, he can jump, can't he?
Oh, he probably could, but he's too much of a nice. I noticed that Dave Gilbert, everyone was drinking, pints and beer, and Dave Gilbert was quietly sipping wine because
red wine,
because he is a connoisseur.
Pure class. Wow, the
pure.
The French.
I make jokes, but Dave was brilliant and so approachable. And I actually got a Facebook message from Charles Cecil earlier today that said, "I'm sorry we didn't have time to catch up." It's like out of the blue. I didn't even know he fucking remembered me. But yeah.
He'll remember you now, thanks in part to me.
Yes, and yeah, Robin McGowan, Thimbleweed Park dude, who also worked for Revolution. He went up to me at the pub and started talking about, it was fun.
He was very nice, but I couldn't put my finger on it at the time, but I kind of kept going. He reminds me of someone, and you know what? Robert looks like a way friendlier Matt Damon. He really looks like Matt Damon.
I'm not even going to comment on that.
Which, of course, also means that he also looks like Mark Wahlberg.
There's like a lie.
We can't really prove that on an audio podcast, though, can we?
No, not really. You'll have to think of a shorter Matt Damon booping my nose. That's Robert. I think that's a good bombshell to end on, isn't it? I think I've covered my bases.
Have you got anything to say, Gareth?
Do you have anything at all?
Yeah, I want to go back next year.
Hell yes.
Hell yeah, we have to. We definitely have to.
We're going to. I'm hooked. And in fact, when I was talking to the Adventure Treff guys, I mentioned that, by the time we said goodbye, I said, I hope to see you next year. And they said in their lovely German accents, there's also Gamescom next year in Cologne. Okay, I don't think they said Cologne, but you get my drift. That's also an option, and I'm really hooked about this sort of thing. I want to see where I can go, and if you gents would like to accompany me, then I would be honored.
I will say that Cologne is a lovely city, and you will enjoy yourself there.
I believe that was a hint.
I think Jean-Baptiste said it best when he said that it's amazing that this is the only adventure game / narrative-driven convention there is. Why isn't there one in America? And then I said, well, there is that GDC in the Adventure Party at GDC in Germany. And he said, yeah, in his lovely endearing Belgian accent, yes, but only go there for the party. Stay away from the convention. The convention is shit.
He was lovely, but I mean, have we talked about anyone at this point who weren't lovely? Everyone was just a hoot to hang out with, and it breaks my heart that I'm still, not there at the moment, partying, listening to interesting talks, talking to interesting people, watching interesting games, and I just can't wait for November 2017 right now.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's the real con disease, people. Withdrawal.
Yes, and not the sweltering, festering open boils at the top of my lip. I am dead sure this has to do with me being face down in some airport ass sweaty chair or something. I had to squeeze into it.
That might be a little libel in that one.
Could be very well. Well, there's a bombshell for you. Yes. AdventureX was terrific. I have to go back next year. However, my wife has said that she will not let me travel alone because apparently I am not.
That's probably for your own health.
Probably, yes. So I'll have to bring her next year. And
either that or you have to fly home to Copenhagen by the end of every day to sleep and then fly back in the morning.
Yeah, apparently I'm good at that. No, but anyway, then maybe I'll get to meet Mrs. Gareth, who for some reason conspicuously absent from the convention.
That's hilarious because right now all I can see in my mind's eye is like Gareth in a dress or an apron.
I'll be doing like the Queen video. I want to break free.
Spoiler, that's not exactly how Emma looks.
Well, no one knows. Shy little thing. So yeah, anyway, I'm all. I mean, I have a ton of stories, and I'll probably get to share those on Twitter. And incidentally, you should probably go follow the show if you don't already. It's on backseatdesigners.com, and we are at BS Designers. And I almost forgot we had a Patreon over at patreon.com/backseatdesigners. That's partly. My late, my surplus charge for getting home was not paid with Patreon money, so it's. You can
owe me money.
You can have some of it. We also have an open Facebook group simply called Backseat Designers, and I've already shared my selfie tour photos over there, and I hope everyone else who is also in the group will want to chime in with their AdventureX experiences.
Oh, I should
please,
do that.
Do take that as a recommendation, and that goes for everyone.
Yeah. I think I'll leave it up to the good I want to break free historian to cap us off.
Gary Mercury.
Yes, Gary Mercury. Do your thing.
What thing? What thing am I supposed to be doing?
Just, play us out, keyboard cat.
You point towards the audience and go, yeah, da, 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 and then raise your fist and they sing along, or something like that.
Have you ever had a dream that you could do so much you could do anything?
Yes, I have, little boy, and I just went to.
I have indeed had such a dream, and it was called AdventureX. Good night.
Good night.
No more for today.